Hi, Nikki, Alex, Liz, and Franju.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I just want to thank you all for doing this. I mean, Alex and Gargi started this initiative, and yeah, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Yeah,
Thanks for helping us organize it, Pranchu.
no problem. Always here.
Thanks so much for the invite.
All right. Well, hi guys. Thanks so much for joining me. The panel is called "How People Are Finding and Building Inclusive Companies." So that's kind of what the topic is going to be about. Obviously, I just want to kick us off and saying that the three of us are a very small portion of a much bigger, much more important conversation. So I just want to purely start the conversation from y'all's perspective. So no pressure. And I do have a bit of ulterior motives with this. We are launching a community called Flint.Community. You can Google that and find hopefully the landing page. It's FLINT.community. Flint is an organization where we hope to continue and broaden this conversation across all underrepresented genders. So feel free to check out Flint.community to learn a bit more, sign up, and we'll be sending out information on upcoming panels and workshops and resources and all of that kind of stuff. So with that said, I will introduce myself. I am Alex Bekalou. I am a senior product marketing manager at a company called GraphCMS in Berlin, though we are a remote company. And yeah, I just want, Liz, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? And then we'll also Nikki after that.
Sure, yeah. I'm Liz Osterloh. I am very recently a freelancer for narrative and content strategy for tech companies. Most recently was new media managing editor at Contentful. My pronouns are they and them. I've been in Berlin for 15 years and working in the tech scene pretty much for my whole career. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. And Nikki?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Nikki, she, they pronouns. I've been in Berlin for around 9 years, and throughout this time I worked in IT support, I worked in performance marketing. Currently I work as an Android developer at Door to Door. So I have a lot to say about diversity in all these different departments.
Yeah, especially making a shift like that into development, I'm sure. Okay, well, I'll just jump right into the questions, but of course this is a conversation. So yeah, I'll start with something hopefully a little easy to help us wade into the water, and just kind of understanding how you chose your current company or you chose to go freelance, what inspired that, and what kind of did you look for throughout that process of finding your current positions that included elements of diversity or inclusion or just safety in your new company or your new position. Whoever wants to go.
Well, I can go ahead because with the company it's probably a little bit more straightforward. So when I was interviewing to work at Door to Door, I actually didn't really know much about mobility. And I kind of went into the interview. It was like, the long process of you have this interview, that interview, you forget what exactly the company does. So you're like, introduce your company to me, kind of also interviewing them back, right? And the way that they presented the company was definitely like a green flag for me, because the company's goal was to make the CO2 emission less. So the idea is that instead of taking their own cars, people would take ride pooling to go somewhere. Instead of taking a taxi that would take one person to go from A to B, it would be like a ride pooling situation with, like, let's say 8 people, and that definitely reduces the CO2 emission. That kind of made me realize that if people are so thoughtful to think about the impact on the environment, they're also more open-minded and at least more open to the ideas of diversity, equality, all of these things. And I was correct.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think I'd love to tag on with just my my most recent experience at Contentful. When I think about what really attracted me, other than obviously what the company does, is very much like the boss that the person that would be my boss at the time. So the person I was interviewing with, her name's Heidi Joy Trethaway. She has since moved on, but she just having this like just amazing, like competent and just very caring woman as like the person I'm interviewing with. And it was like very much like a conversation. It was not, I didn't feel like I was being, you know, just like drilled with really pointed questions, but it was really like about finding like, is this person a fit like with the team? Is this person a cultural fit? And so like that experience, I don't have any sort of specifics of like what she said or how she said it, but it's kind of just that feeling you get when you're sitting in an interview with someone that you feel like really cares about you as a person, and that's honestly, that was the biggest factor.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm hearing from both of you is and I know we know this consciously from a like logistical standpoint when looking for new jobs, if you have to interview them just as much as they're interviewing us. But I know when you're very young in your career, it can be very overwhelming and you're just trying to get the job a lot of the time. So you kind of don't have as much, and maybe I'm from a different generation, but I know that from my experience when I was younger, I was nervous to bring up, you know, being a woman in a tech company or things like that. And what does that look like for them? And, you know, especially when you're looking online and you see these, you know, boilerplate pages of like, we care about diversity with a bunch of stock photos of a bunch of people like shaking hands that look different from each other. And then you look at their senior leadership and it's all, you know, it's bad men basically. So it's kind of hard to figure that out just purely from doing general research. But I think there is so much power in saying here, you know, this is who I am. And am I going to be a cultural fit? Because you do have to spend so much time at your job that it's good to understand and know what you're getting yourself into. But I know that is kind of a luxury as well to sometimes say to someone to interview the job. So I do understand that. Yeah, that's a great place to start. So I kind of want to scale back into your careers as a whole, because I know that you guys have a lot of experience to delve into. And I really just want to understand, like, as you've started from the start of your career and kind of built as a person and built through companies and kind of seen a lot of different teams and structures and types of people and personalities, how has diversity and inclusion kind of changed or shifted? And how have you seen like what has worked within a company and what hasn't really for you? I know it's a big question, but
yeah, it's a big question. And I see kind of like two parts. And one of them is like, what can you ask if you're a bit nervous about asking sort of company culture questions in an interview? My strategy kind of throughout has been like, go back channels if you can. So like I've been the person on the other end of this. I've been the person on this end of this, which is like, if you are part of an underrepresented group, if you have friends of friends or like connections of connections on LinkedIn that you can go and ask like, hey, how is it to be in this company? Like, is this going to be an environment that's friendly to me? And that's something that I've always done, and so far had a lot of success with. I like understanding that more junior people might not have that big of a network, but I think once you start asking around, people are generally really happy to give you just that gut check about where you're starting. And I think that's something like you can ask, like there's questions you can ask in interviews. But for me, that's been the most helpful, I think.
And do you have any like examples of like maybe questions to ask or how to start that conversation or find these people? I know like LinkedIn searches and stuff are pretty common, but just any tactical kind of insights into that, just to kind of how to start the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, when I've done this or when people have reached out to me, it's been very much like a, you know, second degree connection on LinkedIn. You can go in and sort of search like companies that you're interested in and then see like, do I have a second degree connection? And then like really just kind of cold reaching out to somebody and say like, hey, you don't know me, but you know, we both know this person. I'm like considering a position there. Like, how has it been for you? And usually that's all you need to sort of open the conversation. People are generally so helpful about this kind of thing. And I think you get really honest answers. So I would just encourage people to not be afraid to reach out to somebody they may not know, to like ask specifically how the culture at a company is from someone who's working there.
Nice. And I think I interrupted you. I had a second point, but I don't know.
No, that's okay. We can dive into the second point about like what sort of green flags have been like during like experiences and cultures at companies a little later. But I'd love to flip it over to Nikki as well, because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I know I gab a lot, so.
No worries about that. I'm actually the opposite, because I feel I don't really want, this is like a very socialist as a woman thing. I don't want to bother people. So I don't necessarily go to people on LinkedIn. Like, I feel kind of uncomfortable doing that. I do that only with people that I've been friends with or friendly with. I feel comfortable doing that. But I also, like, as a more of a, like, on my career as a developer, I'm on the junior side. So more on the junior side, I feel like, okay, maybe I shouldn't bother these people. On the other side, I do ask these questions on the interview, and it's the most fun experience ever. Because just by the reaction of the interviewer, you can see like where they stand, right? Because if it's something, if you're asking, so the questions that I ask, like, what is your company in relationship with the topic of diversity and inclusion? It's a very open-ended question. You can go from, oh, we think this is a very big topic, we are thinking about making it better in our company, to we actually have processes in place that help people from diverse backgrounds and things like that. So it kind of opens also a door for them to talk about their things. I also really like, because as a non-binary person, it's very important for me to work in an environment that doesn't laugh at the idea of people not being on the binary spectrum. So I do ask about, if you can, like, my question is, if you can disclose this information, are there any trans or non-binary colleagues in your company? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say, I need to double check, which is probably no. Or they are not aware of that, obviously. But that is also like grilling them and drilling them from my side gives me a very specific idea of where they stand with diversity, and especially the type of diversity that interests me in this moment. But also gives them an idea of what kind of person I am and how will it be to work with me, because I can be very annoying about diversity.
I don't think it's annoying if it's necessary.
True. There are two sides to the coin, right?
Yeah. You're only annoying if you don't want it, and then I find you annoying as a person. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, when you were talking, I was thinking of a question that I typically ask when I get to kind of the end of my interview process, and when they say that famous, "Do you have any questions for me?" I always ask, "Why did you join the company?" And I kind of listen to their answer, because if it is more about the product or something like that, it does depend on the person, of course. But a lot of times we'll get a lot of insights into the culture, because, you do have to talk to these people every day. And I'm working across, different cultures and different nationalities and different types of people. And like, how they answer that question can sometimes be really good insights into how they manage the team and what they look for in the team. And also researching the team that you would be on LinkedIn, and like, what do they look like? What kind of things do they post? What kind of, initiatives are they a part of, and volunteer organizations and things like that. So I think that's all really helpful. To keep it moving along, I do kind of want to stay in the same realm, but more, what are some initiatives, like once you're in a company? So you've gotten the job, congratulations, you're in a company, now we have to go move beyond the HR boilerplate. So what are some things that, like, either companies can start that you've seen that have done really well or have not done well? And what do you want to start, or anything along those lines? Anyone? Crickets? I'm seeing nothing.
Nikki, I saw you go off mute, so I was going to let you go ahead.
Then I was just coughing.
Obviously, we have a lot more work than we thought to do in company.
Yes, for sure. Okay, I don't actually think that I have like a recipe for success here. I do have a little bit of experience with what not necessarily to do and what to look out for. So there are some initiatives sometimes in these companies that are mostly driven by marginalized groups. And as we all know, these initiatives take time and take working time, and most of the time they are not being you don't actually get paid to do all of this stuff, and it's still a lot of work, right? It's a lot of informative work, it's a lot of panels, it's a lot of bringing people together and telling them, oh, this is how things kind of are, let's talk about it, kind of. So I was a part in an initiative, still am, where we basically take all of the topics that have to do with diversity and inclusion. It's a lot, so maybe don't do that. Because the topics of, let's say, gender neutral language in internal and external communications go hand in hand with, let's say, work-life balance, and they don't necessarily have to do a lot with one another. So there is definitely, like, I would say, in either smaller companies or in a company where there is only one initiative that takes care of all diversity and inclusion topics, this could be like a trap. So don't go into that trap, and draw boundaries. Boundaries are amazing, best thing, love it. So that doesn't necessarily work. Liz, maybe you have some working ideas.
Yeah, so like I was at one company in the past that had an initiative that was called the Growth Guardians, and I really like this. So I'm a big like there are I know there are specific issues like to sorry about that specific issues that are that to help and support specific identity groups, like for example for non-binary people, having like in like gender inclusive language in documents in your external communications. Luckily, I was on the content communications team and we owned the style guide for all our writing, so we just did that. But like aside from these very specific issues that apply to specific groups, I think there's like a more general like structure of how communication happens and how decisions are made within companies that can be a huge green flag, or it can go backwards. So the company that I was at that was doing this Growth Guardians thing, these were people from like all different levels of the company that were nominated by like put from everyone in the company, like on big decisions. We want to know what our employees need. And so they essentially like created representation for people from all levels of the company and invited them to take part in big decisions. So I've seen this in other places where you have these kind of groups that are either like, you know, the guardians of the culture of the company, but they're a bit more in this position of being cheerleaders for decisions that upper management kind of makes. So you can have these groups with ICs, with people from, you know, middle management, and that sort of have this kind of place. But if there's not a willingness of upper management to actually bring these people into the decision-making process to like actually listen, and this is something that's so much harder to pin down, because you can have these groups and they can have an effect, or you can have these groups and they don't have an effect. And it really, it takes a huge mindset shift if you're in a company that has more sort of top-down modes of communication and modes of decision-making, because that will always sort of fight against this. So it's not the group itself, it's the willingness to bring that group into decisions. And that can have ripple effects across all like diversity and inclusion initiatives, because usually when you look at at sort of like the diversity within a company, you have this pyramid, right? The more on the IC levels, the more diversity you have, and the more you go up, the thinner the air gets. And so just by virtue of like this structure combined with top down, you'll always like not be getting the inputs you need about what diverse employees actually need to feel included. And if you have structures that are less hierarchical, and you have this decision-making process that actively and proactively not just includes, but like encourages bottom-up communication, then you will be hearing more voices from more kinds of people. So this is like a bit like sociological and complex, but this is how I see the situation. So bottom-up communication with full willingness of leadership is like that, for me, is the key to sort of cracking this.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's complicated at all. I think that's completely accurate. Yeah,
maybe I just speak in like really convoluted ways. I don't know.
No, it was beautiful. The way you phrased it was muy caliente. in the right field if you work in communications, I can tell you.
I'll do my best.
No, I think that's really important. And I think, I mean, I can only speak for myself in this as, you know, you, especially in corporations for sure, but especially as in the importance in startups too, because startups are starting the next generation of technology and companies and innovation a lot of the time. And so when you have kind of this blanket look and feel and one point of view directing that, you're servicing a community that isn't being represented by people that are building technology for them. And I think that even just beyond the culture of the company, your success as a company is so detrimental to being inclusive and listening to the bottom up and promoting from within, because you're going to have better retention, you're going to have more revenue, you're going to have different points of view that are just going to make your products more robust at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, if there's anything that you guys, I mean, I think that there's a lot of problems that we've kind of touched on or touched around here beyond just like diversity. But I think also for me, a big component of what I want to do with Flint, especially, is kind of promote kind of nurturing diverse voices that are already within your company. So you've gotten the job and you have these wonderful intern, junior, mid-level people that aren't, you know, cast members of Mad Men. And so how do you guys have any insights into, or any opinions, I should say, it doesn't even need to be like a tangible insight, but just of how companies can do better of, oh, we need this position, so let's hire from outside, and oh, only these men have the experience because they've only been the ones that were able to get that experience. So like and that sounds harsh, but it's the truth a lot of times. So
It is.
Have any insights or anything that your companies have done to kind of promote people from the bottom up to become leadership positions, or to do more than just take like a Skillshare workshop or something like that? Like, I mean, this is an open-ended question. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. At my current company at Door to Door, I started working as an IT support administrator. And within the company, I talked to one of the teams that worked on the mobile app. Mobile was something that I was interested in looking into. And I kind of just said, well, if you want, or like if you have time, maybe I could work with you a little bit, like job shadow you, look at what you do. What they did, they said, we're onboarding you. You're working here now. And basically, within a couple of months, I worked sort of part-time in IT and part-time in mobile. It was very difficult because it was like a lot of juggling, but generally this culture of bringing people in, taking in their professional interests into the account and seeing how motivated they are and giving them an opportunity to grow into some other role is incredible. There has been so much retention in our company because of that. People come in as working students in operations and then end up working, let's say, in accounting because they're more into that kind of thing. I know like this German concept of Ausbildung is sort of doing that, where you kind of try to work in here and then you sort of decide where you like to work. That, but let's kind of just have it in our workplace, give people a little bit of more of a freedom of, oh, I would like to try doing that, and then kind of let them contribute in other aspects that aren't necessarily what they signed the contract to do.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. From my side, I think like when I think back to like places where I've felt the most supported, and like, so Nikki, going back to your point of like being socialized as a woman, I think it took a long time for me to feel like I was in a position to advocate for myself. And something that helped me a lot in earlier careers were people who are more established and like often like male allies who have stepped in for me, who have taken a chance on me. And like, that's something that like a lot of times in very fast moving startups are like, well, we're moving too fast to take the time to look into candidates who don't have like exactly this in the profile, or we're, you know, I think there's also sort of this, when you're this kind of fast moving startup looking like outside to people, like this is like the superstar that's going to like take this department and turn it around. and often like overlook internal candidates. And for me, it's always been somebody who has then like stepped in and said like, you know, give Liz a chance to try this. And that's something that's, again, kind of like a culture thing. I do wonder if you could systemize it in a way to say like, we have, you know, certain people at the company who are like male allies, for example, who are willing to like step in and say like, these are, and I don't know if you could systemize this honestly, but like it sort of, that's what has happened with me. I don't know if I'm like babbling again, but
No, not at all.
yeah.
No, I think that you're hitting on a really good point. And, you know, Nikki, you said this yesterday, and I thought it was a really poignant thing to say again, is that the part of this conversation, even though we're in the midst of it and we have the most knowledge on it from our respected positions in life, I do think that none of this, even what we're talking about, is going to work unless we bring in men. Like, they can't be left out of the conversation. And that's a really hard sometimes pill to swallow when you're feeling oppressed by a system that, benefits men. Let's be really honest, or white men. Let's straight cisgendered white men. Let's be really honest with ourselves. But I think if we have systems in place now and simply, saying, okay, this is what would work and this isn't what will work. And they can say all day, and I've been in those situations where they're like, we care. And then they go off and they do not care. So it's one of those, I think also, like, if you guys have any insights on how you've not educated, you've brought in male allies or developed male allies or searched for them or identified them. I know sometimes they're very willing, but I mean, even for starting Flint, I will say, and not that I thought starting this or saying this would, my male colleagues would like throw a temper tantrum by any means, but I actually had more men coming to me going, I want to be involved in this. I want to learn from this. Like, why are you starting this? And it really kind of blew me away a little bit in a way I wasn't expecting, which was wonderful. But I'm also struggling of like, how do I have those conversations and how do we bring men in without them feeling, I don't want to tiptoe around their feelings, but how do we start that conversation with them and give them a place to start? If you have any insights into that or opinions.
I think just that, like, the way you did it would probably be the way that I would approach it too, is saying like, we are starting this initiative, and wait for the people who are really proactive and say like, I want to be part of this, because those are the people who won't coattail ride. Those are the people who are already like ready to do something and need to like, just would like to know how. So I think just the call out and letting the proactive people come to you and then giving them sort of a guide for like, here's how you can support, that's how I would approach it as well. I think that's spot on.
Nice. Do you have any opinions, Nikki?
I don't have an opinion for that, but from like one of the things that you mentioned, let's say, let's picture a situation, you're more on the junior side, you don't necessarily have a lot of experience, you come into the company, where do you go, right? Mm-hmm. If, let's say, there isn't any structure for you that would support you, I found it very interesting, actually, because a lot of people say that engineering is very male dominated, right? It's very male dominated, incredibly. But throughout all of the companies that I worked at, male engineers were one of the most empathetic people. And I think this is something that I always look forward to, or like I look around and I try to find empathetic people, because this is what makes good allies, people that don't necessarily only think about themselves, that want to help others, no matter their background, gender, anything like that. And I think like from my side, I would definitely want to underline that. Look out for empathetic people. Don't talk to assholes. Because there are always
rules to live by.
I was like, I think that's just something we should all like take with us in just life.
Live, laugh, love. But definitely a lot of my connections right now, and a lot of also the fact that I went to an empathetic person in an engineering, and I said, I want to do mobile, and he said, sure, sit down, let's do it.
Yeah. What I've seen work really well in terms of like people who are more junior and don't quite feel comfortable raising things yet is like, find the noisy people at your company. Like, find people who like in public Slack channels have called things out before. who have like not been afraid to sort of go toe to toe with management. And these might be people who are in more like safer positions. They might be more senior. They might be developers and not someone in marketing, but like people who are really in a position where they don't have to be as cautious about what they say, or they don't have like feel like they have to be like as deferential. And generally those people, if they're already calling out issues in public channels, like they will do so again. And like, if you can say, hey, I don't go to them and say, I have this thing that's happening and don't really feel comfortable bringing it up. A lot of times those people will be very happy to advocate for you, because some people just don't have as much of a feeling of power distance and are like, sure, I'll say it. And those are also people that are good to befriend.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, I was just thinking while you were speaking of like, because there are two sides to this coin of like companies as in general need to do better, and especially company leadership needs to do better and take a lot of what both of you said into account as they develop out their staff. But I think also, you know, I will speak for myself again, always. I don't know why I have to preface that. I feel the need.
You should, as you should, speak for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, as a woman, I've come from very toxic work environments where I've been in rooms where they kind of point at me and go, well, we're diverse, we have a woman. And like, I'm not allowed to speak, but I'm here and, you know, hi. So, and I've been told I have a small brain. I've come, you know, I've seen kind of the gambit of and experience the gambit of just kind of what toxicity can be. And that's not what every company can be, but it helped me develop my voice. So I am someone that will go toe to toe. And like, if someone that was a junior or an intern or something was genuinely like, I don't even understand if I feel icky by the situation and I'm not sure if that's right, or just needs to bounce ideas off of someone. Like I have gone toe to toe publicly with senior leadership because I have no fear anymore. I'm like, come at me. But I also developed that over 10 years of being in situations where I didn't feel like I had a voice. And I don't want, if anyone is watching that is an intern, junior, mid-level, and doesn't feel like they've refined their voice or in a position to speak, because I know that we're all speaking from Berlin and all of us, I'm assuming, are expats. No one here sounds like they have a German accent. So, you know, you are dealing with a lot of like people who can't leave because of visas, or they're paying off certain bills, or, you know, we have a lot of luxuries and privileges a lot of the time. But so, I mean, find those allies. Like if someone came to me and said I was having this, or I want to talk through something, I would stop everything to help them, or at least listen to them and understand what was going on. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, great.
And I have seen this actually, sorry, I just had a thought while you were talking. I have seen this in the past, that it has like this kind of like, I am someone to talk to, is also something that has been systemized at companies I've had, that I've been at in the past, where you have like, and they're also generally people who are nominated and not people that management picks. It's like, you are the go-to person, but it's like people the employees nominate. Like, you can come to me with anything, because these are people who are inside the organization known to be like the confidants, known to be the people who like are really like there for employees. And this has been, yeah, this was again at the same company as with the Growth Guardians, where you like, if you were really new and you didn't have that sort of like implicit established network yet, you haven't gotten the lay of the land, you don't know who the noisy people are yet, but you knew like, this is somebody that the rest of the employees trust to like champion my struggles. And that's something that I have seen work really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's also like having those people throughout different teams and different levels, I would say. Like senior, yes, it does help to have a senior voice, if only from the experience that they offer, as they can say, okay, I've seen this before, or here's what to do, kind of thing, almost like a mentor kind of program. But yeah, if there are people that are safe people that you can go to with kind of anything, because I mean, at the end of the day, we are all human beings. And I think we're getting out of this 1950s ideals of like, you go to work, you have your sandwich at lunch, and then you go home. Like, I think we're past that. Like, we're human beings trying to develop the future. And it's ripe for mistakes. And if we don't address them, then the mistakes are just going to keep getting made a little bit. So yeah, having those advocates outside of HR even to talk through, like, I know this person in product versus this and that. Like HR may have like a kind of rose-colored glasses to certain extents of how teams work and how teams operate with each other, because they're not in the same meeting rooms as everyone else. So I think that's a really good thing to note. Yeah, cool. The next question, it kind of goes along with this. So if we've already covered it, we can move on, but I just want to ask it anyways. what are some roadblocks that either of you have kind of bumped up against in speaking up for yourself or identifying yourself? I mean, beyond just trying to be inclusive but like, and I don't want to put this on you guys because it's not your job to educate the world necessarily about you or anyone else, but how like being not, the normal, that was a horrible word, but not being the cisgendered white guy, like how do you speak up for yourself and educate other people and language you can use and situations that you've run up against where you've learned something that you can give to the rest of us? It's a big question. All of these are big questions, but
It's really hard. Definitely speaking up for yourself, but also I don't find it speaking up for myself that difficult anymore because I already have a little bit more experience. I'm more confident in my identity. I'm confident in my space that I take up. I find it difficult, and I think a lot of people also, like probably mainly male allies, can relate to this. I find it difficult to speak up for people that aren't in the room or don't have the same confidence or don't have the same privilege that I do, because I never want to talk over somebody or instead of someone, but there are still moments where you have to bring things up. I can give you an example. When Corona just started, there were a lot of discussions about that of very racist undertones, and it was difficult to call these people out, especially when it's like a room and it's just you versus these people. And they just kind of say, oh, I didn't really mean it like that and all of that stuff. But still, it's very important, but it's always very, very difficult to bring yourself into a position of, I need to stand up for what is, I believe, right. It's very, that's what I find the most difficult, when something that is happening and you see it's happening to someone else or to someone who is not in the room, and you know that it's not right, not to stay silent. I find it very difficult, but also very necessary.
yeah, I think it also adds to this element when people, oh, that's not my intention. I know it wasn't your intention. It's never anyone's, hopefully, unless you're a monster, it's never anyone's intention to hurt another person or bring another group down. But I think we need to get over the hurdle of, it may not have been your intention, but this is the result. And how are we going to move forward from this? It doesn't make you a bad person, but it does make the conversation you're advocating for bad. So I think that's a great point to make.
I would also say, like, it took me a while to sort of get comfortable with really speaking up for myself. I think also because, like, the less life experience and less workplace experience you have, the less you have sort of points and counterpoints for what's okay and what's not okay. And I think the best thing there is to, like, talk to your friends, talk about how their workplaces are like, see if it's happening the same there. And in terms of like building up the confidence to call things out, start small, start with something where you're like, this doesn't feel as risky, but I want to say it. It just takes time to build up sort of the ability to like be able to speak out for and advocate for yourself. And in the meantime, because I know a lot of times like problems come up and you're like, I'm not there yet to be able to like say this, find other people who are feeling the same way, like talk to people you trust in the company, see if they're experiencing it in the same way, and like bring it up as a group. Like you don't always have to do everything on your own, right? Like if you have a couple of other people, you know, even if they're also ICs, even if they're also junior, if you have a few people who are having the same experience, like bringing it up as a group can be like easier if you're not there yet to be able to say like, I am going to just say this. And it can be really effective because then, you know, whoever's in charge of the situation, whether it's a decision or whether it's a meeting or anything, can sees that it's not like a single person that is having a single issue. It is something that is affecting multiple people. And so that can be really powerful to just have these kind of small collective actions.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And probably within that group of people, there will definitely be somebody, as you already mentioned, that would be more comfortable taking the step forward and saying, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway is for juniors or anyone at any level who doesn't feel they have a voice, is to find someone who is a little bit more of an aggressor, not in a negative way, but an aggressor. I mean, if we're being honest, because those people do exist. And if you're not comfortable speaking up, then that's okay. I think we have this culture sometimes, especially as underrepresented, where it's like, well, you need to find your voice and use your voice, and you need to do this and you need to do that. And like, sure, yes, you do need to find your voice, but not everyone is like that. And not everyone at any point in their life feels comfortable going up. And I think that's why we're all made differently, and we can work off of each other and learn from each other. And if you feel more use the word aggressive, but if you feel more aggressive, or you feel like you're kind of person that can be
hardened.
Yeah, if you're brave, other people are, mending the fields, then I think you can work together. But we all have different personalities, and I think that that's kind of a toxic idea, that you have to have this powerful voice because you are something, or you have to stand up to people because you are something or you aren't something. And
it comes from like a very individualistic sort of cultural background of like, you have to be your own voice for yourself and you're unique. Like, you don't have to do everything alone. You don't have to go it alone. There are so many people, if you're feeling a certain way, if you're feeling like a situation is shitty, it's very likely that someone else will be feeling the same way. So like, you don't have to go it alone. You really don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's more important than anything we've said today, is like, this toxic culture of like, you have to be so great by yourself and find your voice and yell and scream and like be the representative for whatever it is your thing is, It's like, no, you don't. Like, you have to be you. And if that is sitting in this corner and helping others in your own little way, then that's fine. Like, there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. So I think it is about finding your allies no matter what in your groups, in your circles.
I also wanted to add, I think it's very valuable as a new person to a company or a new person in a work environment in general. It's very important to find your little communities, singular or plural, because I found myself always very comforted. Let's say I'm from Ukraine, so there's always a Russian speaking community that is always kind of like mingling all together, or at least everyone knows each other. Then there's probably like the queer gang that people probably know of each other or even talk to each other, and kind of navigating a workspace within these communities, talking to people, it definitely can help you feel more comfortable and get even like more perspectives on the situation. So I think that's also very valuable, like as a tool for young professional.
Yeah. And this is something I will dearly miss at Contentful. We had a very, very large, very inclusive, very vibrant queer community that was like, we had our own Slack channel. And I will miss having that kind of community as a freelancer. Like, this was one of the great joys for me for working at Contentful. So hey to anybody who's watching. Love y'all.
Spawn.
Yeah, I think too, to bring it back to the original prompt of this, is like, part of your interview process, if you are at any stage, I think it's important to ask, okay, if I get this job, what are the meetings that aren't related to my direct job that I'm going to have? Or do you have a coffee and donut? I mean, our company does, like, I think it's called Coffee and Donuts. So there's a little cutesy name for it, but it's basically they set you up with one or two people that you don't work with for a 30-minute gab session to just, hey, how you doing? How's life? What do you like to do? You traveled here? Did you go to this restaurant? Like, and I think that asking what kind of similar measures they take at the beginning of, like, we want you to have one-on-ones with someone from every team so you understand this team, or you can shadow, or we do the coffee and donuts, or, I think it's important to not be forced, but to have that kind of company where they want you to get to know people so that you feel safe reaching out, if it's for a work question or otherwise, because the safe person may not be on your team, and that's okay. So I think it's creating those relationships and working at a company that's willing to let you create those relationships, especially at, big companies or remote companies. So what are they doing to advocate for community within their system and not just get work done, kind of thing. Cool. So I'll move on. This is our last question But of course, if you have anything you want to add that we didn't cover today after we get through this, then feel free. And it kind of goes along with a lot of stuff we already talked about. So it might just be a nice little like kind of ender, a topper, if you will. But kind of what do you think? And I know there's no right answer and there's no like, we've already touched on, there's no perfect answer for anything, especially because diversity and inclusion is something that will continuously change and look completely different in 10, 20 years from what we even see it as now. But what do you think in a company setting specifically, what does healthy diversity and inclusion look like and feel like to you? I can't tell if these are good questions because everyone gets so silent.
No, they're fantastic questions.
Like really terrible.
Need to have a thunk.
They're fantastic questions. I just had to think for a minute.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, feeling like, I think for me, it's feeling like I have like a voice in the company and that like it is something that is like proactively asked for and wanted. Like that it's not something that's happening on the side of big conversations in the company, but something that is like part of how the company operates and how decisions are made. Like that for me is what it feels like. What it looks like, more representation at higher levels of the company. And like not just and I mean a lot of like there have been a lot of great efforts for like hiring diverse leadership. What's another big green flag for me is when you see people within the company who are from lower levels, like you mentioned, Alex, like people who are being supported throughout their career and like chances are being taken on them to be promoted into leadership positions. So those are things like good internal promotion practices, more diversity in leadership, and like feeling like at any level, like my voice is being considered in big decisions. Those I think are like the top three for me.
Nice. I love those. Nikki?
No thoughts, head empty. I have to agree with Liz. I also want to add that the difference between having a voice, being heard, but the part that Liz said, also these voices being considered in actively making decisions, that's the big part, because a lot of times diversity communities or initiatives are just, as they said, cheerleaders or just there to yell stuff. This needs to be changed, and then nobody does anything, and leadership pats themselves on the back because they have diversity and inclusion initiative. But actually having a voice that is being heard and is being considered in making decisions is very important. So
yeah, totally agree. We can't solve all the problems. It takes all of us, men and everyone included. So yeah, that's all I have. Does anyone have any last minute thoughts or things that we didn't get to talk about that maybe you want to bring up? No?
I think we covered
Happy International Women's Day.
quite a bit.
Yes. Hopefully everyone's in Berlin and they can take the day off and relax a little bit. But yeah, I just want to reiterate, like, again, we are a teardrop in the ocean when it comes to this topic. So we have a very secular opinion, but this is just the start of the conversation. So if you want to be a part of the bigger conversation or have more conversations or have your voice heard in a diverse community, look up Flint.Community. Everyone's welcome. It's going to have panels and workshops and resources and just kind of be a safe place for people to kind of develop throughout their careers. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys again for joining us and taking time out of your day in order to do this. And I really, really, really enjoyed hearing your opinions and your experience, and it's really valuable to me. I can say for a fact, I learned so much from you guys. So thank you again.
Likewise.
Thanks so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.